community to me really amplifies our visions of what we want to bring forth. When you think of community, like what is that to you? Or where have you found that really is something that you, like in your life, how does that show up and what does that mean to you? How would you define it?
The same direction.
Yeah. So same path, like-minded, shared values, shared experiences. So you're like, I had this experience and they get it because they've been there.
People that want to homeschool.
Yeah, so they kind of see things, they see what you see. How would you define community and what does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean to you? Yeah, and that's where we can see like our business and our values all intertwine, right? And we can tell the people that we want to work with too. Like they're our community of the people that we want to work with and we want to create something with. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But I think a challenge as the business owner is like putting it out there and relating to your customers, like, hey, our values are super strong, is like what kind of product we want to put out on, to the public.
Yes.
And not saying like our competitors don't do that, you want to be humble about it, but that's sort of where we want our strengths to shine.
Yes.
And like the quality and the effort we put in for having a good customer experience, the user end, is important to us. It's just communicating that is the hardest part, right?
Yeah,
That's
and then when you put that out there, these are our values. This is what we care about. We tend to attract. We might get the people that aren't quite a fit, but in general, right? You find you tend to attract the people that are
and from
with
a
that,
business
and you're clear.
perspective, then you have less of the PITAs, right?
Yes.
The pain in the
Yes. Yeah.
butts, like to
Right.
deal with, because if you aligned with them and they bought into your product, it's not like they didn't do their, you kind of filter out the people that don't, maybe kind of by price point, but also it makes business a little bit easier when you can demonstrate that and they value you, right, as a business.
Right.
So if we get a lot of feedback, just verbally mostly, about like why they like our racks and like why they would never go to but they're already our customers. So how do you present to like growing your business? That's the hard part for us.
Taking that and then having a wider reach. Has anyone having an experience where you had to leave a community, or you found that it just wasn't, or maybe you outgrew a community, or you were part of a community because you thought this was the right thing, but you found yourself struggling with not feeling seen or nervous system all jacked up?
Like a whole high school experience?
Whole high school. Yeah, exactly. High school for most of us, yes.
I'll quickly send it, but basically I had to do a call to action for a community that I've been struggling with in terms of following my values of stuff. So let me hurry and make that, but it is like, to me it's, they generate a good chunk of revenue a year, but is it worth the stress? Mm-hmm. Is it worth the time? Is it worth the frustrations and everything?
Right.
So let me send that to you.
Has anyone ever had that conflict where there's something that in business, maybe they're a good customer, but you're really in that, is it worth it? And what happens, like if you're around, if you have a client or a customer, it's kind of like, okay, I want to help them, or they're they pay well, but it's not a fit, kind of brings out the worst in us, or just generally, kind of like Travis was saying, it's really our whole life, right? It's like, so our community outside of our business impacts, it's like, they all intertwine. So what is it like for you when you're around people, community, a client, that just doesn't align? What impact does that have on you outside of just the interaction with them? So you have that interaction or time with them, and then how does that impact you? Yeah, so stress level goes up.
It pulls you down.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And do you notice that it's, like, I had this observation of, okay, so let's say, give Brandon the mic, she loves the mic. So let's just say you have a meeting on Thursday morning with a client that you really have that is a pain, okay, and it's Monday. And you look at your calendar, and that client is Thursday morning, and it's Monday. What happens?
You dread the week.
You dread the week.
Yes.
And you're aware if it's like a ticking time, yeah, like Thursday's coming, right? And then you have that meeting, and it's a soul sucker. And then what happens after the meeting?
You don't feel good usually.
Yeah.
You still don't feel good about it.
And then it's like recovery time,
Yeah.
right? And then if you're with friends, family, doesn't it kind of bleed out to them too? Like maybe you have like, you kind of snap it, you know, someone in your life, because it's the stress that's built out from here. So I observe this for myself too, because sometimes I can kind of justify, it's like, okay, it's just Thursday morning for an hour, right? That I kind of have to deal with this person or be in this community. But really, it's not. It impacts our whole well-being. Whereas if you looked on Thursday and you had that client or the community that you love to get together with, that you just feel amplified and you get more ideas and you feel recharged, and you look at it's Monday and you can look at your calendar Thursday and that's coming up, then how does that impact your day and how you show up in that moment, right? So you're excited and you're showing up in this moment differently because that's coming. So it's just to put community in a bigger context and people that we work with in a bigger context, that it's not just this one interaction. It creates this whole like fabric of our life, of how we live and how we show up in this moment. So with some of those really great examples, I wanted to, so I was kind of like, do I bring this forth? Do I not? Because this is something I offer in retreats. So it's a little bit like, I'm bringing this forth in a different context, so we'll see how it goes. And I just wanted to say first, whatever thing that I created to, as we all look at these different ways that we can be, where, you know, we all have moments where we show up and we're trying to be liked, or or we feel threatened, or, you know, it's like an either or. We get in like an either or, right or wrong kind of battle, right? Like we all get in those moments. And then we have moments where we're really aligned with, this is me, these are my values, this is what I care about, and I'm going to take a stand for me, right? And then there's those moments where we're connected to and aware of that there's a bigger unfolding, right? Whatever that is for you, whatever you're, you know, whether it's God or the universe or whatever it is, or nature, we just have those moments of awe, like, okay, there's something way bigger happening here than just my life and my, you know, frustration with the line at Starbucks, right? Like we have these kind of awe moments. So this framework is just to put those in levels of perspective so we can kind of gauge, where are we? So the bottom one there, and this isn't meant as a right, wrong, either or like a better, worse. This is that's that one. The one that has the blue line on the side that goes up the side. So at the bottom there, that's what I refer to as like cultural perspective. So this is when we are in, usually fear is in the lead here, and we're trying to fit in. We're trying to be liked. We're just stuck in our opinion, and we're going to fight to the death about that opinion. This is also where status shows up as a driver. So we are seeking status, and if we build a community around having status, right, that can often really go haywire because it's not as aligned. But you can see where that happens, right? Being in social circles or having certain people in your life because of the status that it provides. And this is where, so I'm just curious, just from reading that, would anyone be willing to say kind of what you see in that level of perspective, or where you find yourself ever in that? Like one tell for me is I feel tense. I'm kind of tense, and fear is there. I'm trying to prove myself. I'm trying to, you know, be right. I'm trying to make sure I have like some status there because I feel threatened. Do you see anywhere in your life or a moment that you can see where you've been in that place? Or maybe like a lot of times with family, right? Our in-laws come over and we're in that space, right? We're suddenly like saying, you know, justifying or like explaining or trying to prove ourselves, or having them like us. Justifying. Right, exactly. And you're just kind of digging the hole. Yeah. Or, okay, high school came up. High school, a lot of us can relate to this very cultural experience of we're trying to fit in, we're trying to survive, we're trying to wear the right thing, say the right thing. Okay, that's a very great example of where cultural perspective really takes the lead and also really forms a lot of our life experience. We kind of get stuck in that, what happened there, right? And we spend our whole lives trying to like prove ourselves because of what happened in 10th grade, right? So this is the power, though, of being able to see it, because if we can name it, we have, yeah, we can move through it. We have some capacity to bring ourselves up to an elevated place. When it's just we're in it and we can't identify it, we're just in the, like, oh, this, I hate this feeling, I'm tense, but we don't even know what's going on. Yeah, so it's a great example of like Sarah's example is, okay, I have to go into the school meeting and this is just something that I have to do. And I notice that I get tense because of this environment, but like it's work, like I have to do this, and so it's going to be this amount of time, and I can take care of myself before and after, and right. And then with your example, it's like the community of who do I want to work with, and where we have a choice, right? It's like, okay, I like to look at it like the software that downloads between us, right? It's like you're a good person, I'm a good person. The software that downloads between us when we're together is like not a great optimizing energy. Yeah, or we're like, okay, we can even take responsibility. It's my stuff, you know, it's my stuff, but for whatever reason, it just brings out the worst in me, you know, and I think that's why kids are our great trainers, because we can't just, you know, break up with them, but they keep bringing up all our stuff that we have to work through. Family brings out our stuff, right? And so this is also where we can see, okay, so on that line, this on the side is self-care and inquiry. So if we're going into that school meeting and we know, okay, when I go in there, for whatever reason, I get tense and I get triggered, or when I'm working with that particular client, that right now I'm not going to break up with them, or I'm going to a family occasion and I know it just brings up my stuff. First, we can just take a break from it and like really self-care. Okay, before I go to that meeting, I'm going to do a 10-minute meditation. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to, like, whatever works for you, but something that fills your tank up before you know something, because we often go into these kind of depleted, or we're rushed, or we're half full, you know, and then it like kind of drains the whole thing. So it's like what, or even going into that meeting, I'm going to listen to a great song that I love and just move around a little, or sing a song, or listen to great music, and then we kind of set ourselves up so we feel good going in. And then if it drains us a little, like, okay, right after, I know I'm not going to jump on that call that I need to be at my best. I'm going to take 5 minutes to get myself back, you know, and there's so many things. We can do a quick breath. We can just, you know, go outside and just like take in some fresh air. But we have that planned, knowing that this is a drainer, right? Or I'm going into Thanksgiving dinner. Like, here's all the ways I'm going to prepare, build myself up, and then after, like, recover. So if we know, we can start to actually bring inquiry, like, why is it, what happens here, and then how can I take care of myself?
I was going to just tell you a couple tricks that some people have taught me over the years. I had this one girlfriend, she was at E15 by like age 30, it's like top of the military.
Yeah.
And like when 9/11 happened, and they flew her from Germany back to the United States to go through all the anthrax. She's a super smart girl. But anyways, I said, how do you do it? You know, being around all those men and powerful people and just be calm. And she goes, I've learned if I have something that's in my head all the time over and over, like worrying about Thursday and it's Monday, she goes, I tell myself I'm going to think about that problem for 10, 15 minutes, and I put it on my schedule, and that's the only time I'm allowed to think about it. So like when she's all stressed and it pops in her head, because I'll worry about that meeting all week long.
Yeah.
And it's helped a lot. Be like, I was supposed to think about that Monday at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I have 15 minutes and leave it alone the rest of the week.
Right.
Like, and then the next, you know, when it comes up again, like, nope, you're over at Monday at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So that has helped a lot.
Yeah.
And then I noticed sometimes another client had told me one time, it's like a lion. She goes, you have 3 choices. You can attack it, go around it, or go through it, or under it, over it, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, she goes, sometimes you just have to walk up to it.
Yeah.
And so I've noticed that, like with some clients, I have this intimidating young commercial realtor that makes a fortune. I mean, you sometimes you just have to walk into it because it's something you have to learn.
Right.
Preparing for an event
Yeah.
obviously is great, you know, taking the time to get yourself in the right frame of mind before you enter, knowing that you may or may not come out of it depending upon what it is. How is that handled differently when a sudden
Yeah.
change happens, if that makes sense. When there's
yeah.
there's a, sudden change and you can't find your zen, if you want to call it that,
Right.
because of that, and then you get into sometimes fight or flight
Yes.
symptoms and stuff like that. Do you have recommendations in that regard?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we know, first I find it really just, if we know if we can identify what happens for us personally, like, okay, I get tight shoulders and I kind of shut down. Like we all kind of have our own version so that we can identify it really quickly. And then having some kind of, so we can name it, right? I love the expression, name it to tame it. So you walk in, you're feeling good, and then someone says something and you're like, right? You're like, oh, okay, whatever your expression is for it, I'm triggered and then have some, like I use like a quick breath, which is two inhales in and a long exhale out that you can do standing right in front of someone, nobody knows you're doing it. And it's just like, and it triggers the vagal nerve to say, you're not going to die right now. And you can just start to feel yourself calming. Or what I'll do, because my shoulders go up, it's like an ant, right? So I'll be talking, or I'll be in that environment, and I'll just put my shoulders down. And in my head, I'll just say, you're okay. It's okay. Just take a breath. It's okay. So you kind of just in that moment, calm yourself. And then sometimes it just takes over, and we do whatever we do. And then it's like we have to kind of recover ourselves afterwards, right? But I find the more I know myself, like how I react, and then the things that kind of calm me quickly, or if we are able to, we can say, can you just give me 1 minute? I just have to run to the restroom. I'll be right back. And then we can just like, I've had that where it's like, just kind of recenter and then come back. So I found too, I don't know about for you, but where we can to be authentic too, like, I'm really not understanding what you're saying, or I'm having this, and it depends on the relationship, but the more we can kind of express it or have a sense of humor about it. Wow, I just totally had a reaction to what you said. Because it's obvious, right? Let me just kind of like take a minute to really hear you. But I think it's like learning about ourselves, right? And then you've found things that work to kind of shift you out of that space. There's one that I love that you can do too if you get really riled up and you might not want to do this in front of people, but if just something happens and you're just like really, your nervous system is just all jacked up, you can tap right here and you can just breathe and say, I can feel this too. 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 And the nervous system, you can do all kinds of, even though I'm stressed, I can handle this. Even though I'm stressed, I can handle this. If you've done tap, and it really, at first I was like tapping, and it really works. Like if you just do one round, your whole nervous system just calms down and you can go back in. Yeah, and then an inquiry that I love, especially because often it's the thought we're having in our head that creates the reaction. So Teresa, when you said he thinks I'm stupid, he thinks I can't, whatever. It's like we have this thought that triggers this emotion, and then we start to respond to that, and then we're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, and it kind of spirals, and then it gets worse because we're kind of fumbling around, and then they're like, what's going on, right? So one of the questions that's the inquiry part of that I love is like a simple, like easy to remember one is that true? Yeah, so I just love that one in general. Or when I'm like, that guy is, it's like, okay, is that true? Do I know that's true? Right? Or, yeah, my assumption. I don't know the whole story. Yeah, or we get in a whole entangled story about a family member or someone else, and we're like, is that true? Or a thought about ourselves. I'm stupid, I don't understand this. Or he's thinking that. Is that true? Do we know that he's thinking that? What else could he be thinking? Oh, he could be thinking about himself and how he's looking in this moment. So once we bring inquiry to that thought that's creating stress, like I just always look at, okay, I'm having stress in my body, so what's the thought I'm having? And then bring inquiry to that and some like pause to shift it. So I'm just gonna go over the other part briefly. What happens is so I like to think about the art form of pointillism with this. So pointillism is, the art form that has like all the tiny little dots. Okay, so when we're in group cultural perspective, we're in the dots. We're standing next to in the situation, it's chaotic, we can't see what's really happening, we're just in it. If we take a step back right? Just get some breath around it. We start to see some form. It goes from all this like gray and black and white dots to like, oh, I can start to see some form around it, right? So that's the power of, is that true? Taking a breath, taking a pause, asking new questions, taking a walk. Like how many of you have been in a locked in right or wrong, and then you go for a walk or you take a break and you're like, oh, wait, I can kind of see their perspective now, right? So that individual perspective is like, what is my truth in this moment? What is another truth that someone else could have? What is, like, we start to get out of that, it's really survival, right? Into like a bigger truth. And I don't mean that like the truth, but like our own. So when we step back, we see both pieces. Well, and it is really true too. Like if you can see both puzzle pieces, and I'm looking at Teresa, I'm like, okay, she has hers and I have mine. Can we be in community together? Right? Because it could be like we don't have enough aligned values, or there's some things that are different, but we are aligned enough to be in community. Right? So we can like really see the whole picture. And then that grand organized design picture is really like we're far out. Like if you imagine you're in space and you're looking at planet Earth, you know how much perspective that gives you when you look at planet Earth and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out about this, and I'm like floating through space going 60,000 miles per hour. Imagine yourself, you're stressed out about traffic, and then you pan out to the whole universe and Earth and this, all the planets, and you're like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I will be okay, right? But it's a survival instinct. Like I like to look at the example of snow monkeys in Japan. If there's anyone ever seen those, where images of them where they're in that kind of hot spring. It's like, okay, so what happens in the winter? I learned this in a documentary my son was watching, and I was like, this is exactly like humans. This is an analogy. This is perfect. Yeah. So what happens is in the winter, they get in the hot tub to survive winter, but then there was all these monkeys snow monkeys on the peripheral with like frozen beards and holding their babies, and right, and a lot of them don't survive winter. And the one who determines who gets in the hot tub is the matriarch. It's all hierarchical. So what happens is, especially around status, is if we have any trigger, like I don't have what I need to have. I don't have the education. I don't have the fill in the blank of what's important happening right now in this group environment, and it triggers that survival instinct. It is literally like, I'm not going to get in the hot tub and I'm going to die. Right? Did anyone have that? Are you relating to this experience? Like when you're triggered like that, and then we start to throw out these weird kind of, well, I don't have that education, but I've traveled. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Where you just kind of
just enough.
Just try to elevate yourself enough to get your system to calm down that you're not going to die. Okay, so just to have some compassion for ourselves in those moments, that it's so instinctual, coming from, I'm just trying to survive. I am a human animal trying to survive here. Make sure that I have, if we show up to somewhere and we're wearing the wrong thing, or like, it kind of depends on what's important to us and in that environment, right? But it's like, and if it's important, because if it's not important to us, we just really don't care. Like, I don't care about that. But if it's important to us, you'll get that trigger, right? Of, I don't have enough in this environment. And then we kind of operate in this weird way. Everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay. Well, and if you look at cultural, they're bringing up something that's going to have them dominate or win the environment. So, like, I'm going to go with, I have the most I'm going to control everybody. But it's all coming from the same place. It's all coming from a survival instinct. It's just those of us that kind of tend to, like, I just fade away. I'm like, I'm not even dealing with this, and others that go in and get more aggressive. Okay, so if we go up, we find individual. So is this helpful, like this framework, or can you kind of see? Okay.
Breathe, and we gotta name it to tame it.
Yes.
Entertainment's huge. Yeah.
Name it
I
to
like
tame
that.
it.
I
That's
like
Dr.
that.
Dan Siegel. Yeah. And in the context of community, build community from individual truth, grand organized design, versus cultural tribal. Because when we create community around how to survive this place, right? Yeah, we don't end up with people that really see us and get us, and it's like a manufactured, okay, if I have these friends or this community or this status, I will be safe. But we never feel seen or heard or amplified.
I see my kids do this all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it starts there because they're kind of finding themselves in community, right? And we kind of have to start with, because we can't thrive until we know we're going to survive. So we're kind of like, how do I survive? And then now that I have this core, so it's like part of our process, right? And when we're young, like that's part of it. Is like, how do I be liked? How do I fit in? How do I have the right whatever? So the next piece, if you're open to doing a little exercise of, I really appreciate how like everybody open to engaging in all this. So this part is about using the body compass, because I feel like this is probably one of the most, I have found to be one of the most essential tools for navigating, cultivating community, and really everything. Like this is kind of one of those, the story I started with this call Jeff, really was body compass, right? So this idea and knowing that our body has incredible intelligence, right? And it's picking up information all the time, all the time, all the time. This is why we can walk into a room and see someone 15 feet away from the back of the head and be like, I know exactly who that is, right? Because we've been picking up all of that information. And often we look outside of ourselves, be like, what's right, what's wrong? But all the information is right in here. And we know, how many of you have had that experience where you had a little hit like, probably shouldn't go to that, or probably shouldn't do that, and then you override it because of like a social self-thought, like, well, but I should. Or, oh, that might be a good business opportunity. Or, oh, maybe I'm just sensitive and I should give that person a chance. And then down the road, you're like, I knew it. I knew it the second I met him. Right? Had that experience? Yeah. Okay, so our body gives us feedback in the second, all the time. But we are so here, right? Martha Beck has a great way of saying it, which is our body is like this miraculous space of information, navigation, and we use it to take our heads to meetings. Okay? So we're just here, like, I gotta figure this out, Okay, so it's not that we don't use our brilliant mind, but instead of our mind being in the lead and dragging our body's knowledge behind, we tune in here first, and then use our mind to puzzle crack from there, right? So just tuning into, how does this feel? Am I human pendulum? Am I leaning towards this, or am I like leaning away? And then given that, how do I want to use my mind to figure it out? Which, before we do this, I just want to say, so what makes a really important part of this then is what I call cultivating peace. So we live in such a fast-paced society that we usually override. Our body's giving us all this intel, and we're just overriding it because we're rushing, we're here, we're there, right? And it's like, go slow to go fast. Because when we actually slow down, we get such incredible information, we can make quantum leaps versus like working so hard. Okay, so cultivating peace is like, I mean, we have to do whatever we can do. It's not going to be ideal. Getting enough sleep if we can. Eating foods that like really work with your body. Drinking enough water. Spending time with people that you feel cared about around. You know, what are some others that for you give you a sense of well-being?
Alone time.
Alone time. Yeah, we need alone time. Yeah. And it like fills our tank, right? Like we feel, yeah. So any others that you can think of that give you a sense of well-being and peace?
I like playing in dirt.
Playing in dirt.
I was going to
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. Yeah. So time in nature, being outside. And what seems pretty universal is like something with our hands, right? Whether we're in the dirt or we're making something or art, like something creative, right? So our creativity, being in nature, really any kind of nature, physical movement, whether it's dancing or walking or just kind of moving our body around. For me, one is music. We have music playing in our house all the time because it's hard to kind of get really stressed when you have like a really good song going. So we just have it playing all the time, right? So or just like a quick dance break, or so it's a good exercise just to kind of think about what is it that when I do it, and I like to think of the things that give me the most for the shortest amount of time too. So I have those go-tos. So it's like if I just do that for 10 minutes, I feel better all day long, right? So you get those like ones that maybe you can't do all the things, but that gives you like the most for the shortest amount of time. So you just have those go-tos. Because the more we cultivate peace, our inner peace, the more we can tune into our own inner navigation, right? So there's a really, and I didn't bring the actual piece of science, so I'm going to you'll get the idea. Don't quote me on this. But the conscious mind takes in something like 40 bits of information per second. Okay, the conscious mind. And if anyone knows the statistic, to jump in. But I don't understand 40 bits. Well, okay, and imagine this comparatively, okay? So the conscious mind takes in 40 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind, unconscious mind, takes in 11 million bits of information per second. Wow. So it's all this data that we're not, think of we're here, you're taking in what I'm saying and what each other are saying, you're taking in the environment, but think of all the things that your subconscious is taking in. Even though I haven't looked over at Travis in a little bit, I know where he's sitting, I know kind of what he's doing. Because my subconscious, I'm aware, right? I'm aware of the guy that just came in and put his head in the door, right? You're just aware of all these, I'm aware of what kind of weather's happening outside, even though I haven't thought about it. So there's all these things that your subconscious is tracking. So when you have something come up, it's using all that data to give you a nanosecond reaction. And then we have to bring some inquiry, because sometimes it can be from a wound, right? I don't want to go in there because it reminds me of high school, right? And then we have to take a minute, get calm. Okay, is that true? Is this important to me? Yeah, I can move through that. But it has you see, oh, I had a little reaction to that. What's that about? Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to go in there and not be liked or whatever. And then you can kind of work through that and show up as yourself. Okay, but the body compass is such a critical tool. And with building community, I will meet people and be I'm such a lovely person, and not my person, or not my person yet. And then there's other people, when you meet them and you're just I feel like I've known you my whole life. We should know each other. And you can just navigate, rather than getting so involved in your head, well, it's a good opportunity, well, they're a good person, oh, should I do it? It's I'll look at things on my phone that come up, I'm no, I feel like a real no. Or I feel a maybe, I need to find out more. Or I'll feel yes, this is something, human pendulum is right. Well, and you can, one thing that I do in that kind of situation, because I used to say yes and then say yes big, right? Versus you don't have time in that moment. It's let's do a small, I'll talk to you tomorrow, versus let's get into this project together. Right. A smaller experiment, a smaller, let me think about it. Let me think about it. Let me sleep on it. Because you kind of know you need that time, and then you sleep on it, and then in the morning you check in again. Close your eyes and think about it and see, are you leaning back or are you leaning forward?
I comment on some of that, me missing a good portion of this, but there's the subconscious kind of decision and stuff where I know some people that carry around a coin, and they'd be okay, if it lands on this, I'm doing this decision. If I land on this, doing this other one, they flip it. Once they see the results, it's either I feel comfortable with this or it's crap.
Oh.
You
Yes.
realize the result.
So it's
Yes.
actually a decision. So
Yeah.
it's another process of how
Yes.
really confirm your decision, yes or no.
Yes.
Yeah.
How you feel from actually.
Yeah, that's a great
really good
idea. Yeah,
That's
I
a
can
really
stay
good.
I can stay on the fence for longer than overnight.
yeah.
I'm the same way, but it's.
I can string people along really well.
Or what I'll do is I'll kind of make it so I'm content with it, but not
No.
not extreme
Yeah.
happy or unhappy kind of.
Right.
It's hey, this is enough.
Yeah.
Because I have major decision paralysis, so those moments help me just, you know, in the programming world, it's MVP, minimal viable product. So it's just enough to get by, but if it's coming with other things, it might need more time to wait on.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great, like, you can do it the other way too, like, I'm gonna say no to this and sleep on it. And then if you're waking up in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm still thinking about it, I still wanna, then like step in, right? But like the coin example is like, it makes the decision for you, and then you can see, how do I feel about that? Like, or I said, I said yes, yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good tool.
yeah.
It is, because it's like, oh, the decision got made, wait, how does that sit now?
Now you can tune into it versus, the decision paralysis, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do this exercise. Okay, so for this one, what you're gonna do, and how many of you like tune into your body regularly? Like you're pretty connected there of your like
Yeah.
experience, kind of learning
Yeah,
that?
listening to it.
Listening, okay, anybody like, not at all, you're kind of more, I know when I started this, I was just all here. That's where I started too, it was like, I've never really checked my sensations of something, I've just been all in here. Yeah, so this is kind of a just experiment, just play around with, see what comes up here. Okay, so everybody comfortable closing their eyes for a minute to kind of visualize? If you're not, you can keep your eyes open, that's fine. Let me just look at this handout, which part is first? Okay, so if you could close your eyes and then imagine something that you consider a negative, like when you're around that client, when you're in that environment, you would describe that as a negative experience. So this doesn't have to be something horrible, it's just something like you don't like being around that person or in that environment. And just imagine being there. Just put yourself there in this moment. And then if you don't have something, if you could raise your hand, just so I know kind of where you're at. Okay, so everybody has something. Okay, so as you're sitting, we're not going to sit here very long, but just put yourself there as if you're here in this moment, and then tune into your body and the sensations. So starting with your feet, just notice how your feet feel, moving up through your legs, your stomach, your chest, your shoulders, your back, your neck and throat, your face, your lips, your eyes, and then move to the top of your head, and then back down like the back of your neck, shoulders. And then just take a moment as you're sitting in this experience that you would consider negative. Just do a scan of your body and see what are the sensations in your body that stand out to you. Where are they? How does that feel? Okay, and then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And what did you notice? What stood out to you?
Shoulders are very tight.
Shoulders are tight.
I
Okay.
feel like heart and throat chakras.
Yes, heart and throat chakras. Yes. A little tight.
Tense.
A little tense. Yes. A little blocked.
And the gut feeling,
In the gut. Tight, like a tight gut.
The gut,
Yes. Okay.
Mine's the heart.
Okay.
Like my heart just feels like saddened.
Okay.
Like it just feels like down.
Down. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anything different than that? Any other?
It's a forest in there. And wolves coming after me.
Yeah. And then how does that? What is the
Just like,
sensation around that?
Somebody's gonna eat you.
Yeah. So what do you notice about the sensation?
No, just tightness and scared.
Tight.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you might notice like yours shows up in your heart or your gut or your throat, but universally it's a restrictive feeling, right? It's a tightness.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't take a full breath,
Yeah.
and that's the region.
Yeah.
Like heart kind of.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm restricted.
I'm restricted, yeah. And then it's good to notice your version. I get tight shoulders. You get this sort of, you're right. So like,
Tight neck. There's a bunch.
yeah, but yeah.
Not good.
It's not, yeah. So if we can identify our own, it's like, oh, every time I feel this here or the heart or this. This is my body giving me feedback. This is like the intelligence of my body giving me feedback. Okay, so on that form, you can first take your negative experience and just rate it. So if it was like a -2, 3, I mean, you can go higher than that. But what would you say? Like, okay, I kind of recalled a -3 experience. And then you can give that bundle, and if you want to write some of the sensations down too, so you remember like the ones that stood out. And then you want to rate, or you want to name that bundle. So, wolf in the trees. or
The whole package of the
Yeah.
sensation, you want to give it a name.
yeah, because you want to have a barometer. You want to have just something that's easy to identify. You go into a situation and you're like, this is the heart, saddened heart. The saddened heart. Like you want to give something to name it quickly. Identify it for you. Okay, and then shake that one off. And then when you're ready, close your eyes again. Okay, so now close your eyes and just imagine a positive experience. And this can also be just a place that you feel relaxed. Okay, it doesn't have to be a person or an event. It can be just somewhere that you feel really good. Okay, and just imagine yourself there. Put yourself with that person. Sometimes it could be with animals, in nature, or it could be an event that happened in your life. Okay, and then you're gonna check in. Start with your feet. Notice your feet. Move through your legs, your stomach, your chest, shoulders, arms, back, your neck and throat, your head, your face, your lips and your eyes, the top of your head. And then just do a scan as you recall this positive space or experience. Just notice any sensations that stand out to you and where are they in your body. Okay, and then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. What did you experience? What stood out? So you can see too how the first one was like everything was around being restricted, right? And then these examples are around being open, relaxed, calm, like an opening, a lightness. Okay. So you want to do the same thing, just rate it. What was that positive experience rating? And then give it a name. Isn't it amazing that you can be sitting in the exact same seats and you can, in your mind, recall a negative experience, and then in your mind, recall a positive experience, and your body reacts in a nanosecond to whatever you're thinking in your mind. So this also shows you the power of your thoughts, right? That you thought about the sitting and looking at the clouds and your whole body relaxed. You thought about whatever your negative experience, right? But you're still just sitting here in the chairs. So this is how quickly our body responds to this, whatever we're thinking in our mind. I just think that's pretty fascinating. So when I did this, my negative was this. I had this client one time, and we're like, we're going to set you up in this villa, and you can bring your whole family, and we're going to pay you all this money, and you can spend the weekend with us, and like really do this work, because we've been working on the phone for a while, and like we could do a deep dive. So there was nothing about that was wrong, or like, that we can do a deep dive. I like villas. They're like, the kids can swim in the pool, we'll buy you all tickets. I'm like, this sounds all great, right? Like, what's wrong with this? As I'm listening on the phone, my whole body is like this, like just tense and tight, my jaw, my shoulders. I'm like, why? Relax, like this is a good situation, right? I keep listening, and I kept overriding. Because I got off the phone, and I talked to my husband about it. He's like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm like, there's something, I'm just getting this feeling that it's not a good idea. So, but I overrode it again. And I said, yes. So here I am like this. I'm like, yes, sign me up. So things progress. Okay, and at some point, I'm at dinner one night, and I get a text from the wife, and she sends me a picture of her with bruised face. And I showed it to my friend, and she's fine now. She actually, just so you know, she left this person, and I don't mean to bring up a trauma, but this was a real. Now I'm sitting at dinner, and my friend is like, "Okay, we gotta handle this because now you have a picture, and she goes to court, and now you're dragged into court, and now So I told her, you need to call the police, and here are resources, and this is not, this is not my realm here." And she sent me some other information of what was going on, and it was really scary. And she did take that. She went to the police, and she left that situation. So I ended up handling it as best I could and distancing myself from the situation. Thank God they never called me into court, or it really ended there as far as my part. But that moment I reflected, and I was like, I knew the second they asked me. My body knew the second they asked me that was not a good situation. I couldn't tell in the words, but something told me that there was something going on here I didn't know that was not good. And so I called, and I know that's like a heavier thing, but I called my negative, the villa, my word, because it reminds me that even though it sounds all exciting and good and right, that if I have that feeling that it's not, to trust that. Because it was such an extreme example of like, your dream's coming true, you can come to the villa and all these things, to like the worst scenario you want to be in, right? So the villa reminds me to trust that, like even if it sounds all good, to trust that inner knowing, or at least bring more questions. And then my positive, I named as Sedona, because when I did my very first retreat, I scheduled it in Sedona, Arizona. And I had all this, about a month before, I had so much fear. And I was like, oh, this is my body telling me I should not do this. But when I actually started to look and I thought about canceling it, it was kind of like flipping that coin. Like, okay, flip the coin, not going. I was like, no, I got to do this. So I was able to see that my body gives me some stimulus that's like, seems like sometimes it could be a negative, but it's actually just fear of the unknown or fear of expansion. And so it reminded me that the Sedona, just because I'm getting some, because this can be a question too from people, like, well, what if I get all this sick to my stomach, and is that my body telling me I shouldn't do this? And that's why, like, if you actually tune in, like just for a moment now, think of something when you've done something really scary and you kind of get that sick feeling or that nervousness. How different that set of sensations is than this is a no. Right? It's actually a different sensation. Does everybody see that? Like for you, it's a different sensation? Like it's a different kind of sickness in your stomach? Right? There's nuance. Right? It's a different kind of wanting to throw up. But it's like one feels, right? They feel different. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to our own body's feedback, because we can be like, oh, this is my excited but scary. This is my I'm going for it, but I feel kind of sick to my stomach. And this type is like, heck no, like not doing that, not going there. This feels really not the route. So having those, so I'll look at these situations like, is that a villa or Sedona? Right? And it helps me right away just remember and make a quicker decision about it. So other ways you can use this is like one that I love is you take out your calendar for the week and you just go through, you get out of your mind, you kind of just drop into your body and you look at the items on your calendar, just one by one. And you can even, if you're really organized about it, you can put it on a paper, like on the left side is your calendar and on the right side is your body compass reading. You're like, okay, meeting with so-and-so, that's a +4. Meeting with so-and-so, -2. And you go through your day and you just do without overthinking it, you do a quick body check and you rate it. And then you see, and then if you do your whole week and then you do bird's eye view, you actually see all these ups and downs and you can make some really, really, based on that body, like tweaks. When they were little, we went to gymnastics because I was so like social tribal self, like every kid, like, you have to go to gymnastics. Like, gymnastics, this is all the things it provides, right? So we called the gymnastics, and I lived in Arizona at the time. This place was hot and sweaty, and my kids did not like gymnastics. And I'm like, we have to go to gymnastics. Gotta get out there and have your flexibility or whatever. So they're doing gymnastics, and it was like getting them there was a pain, getting, all the things. So when I did my rating, it was like this big dip. And then I look at my thing, I'm like, what am I doing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 times a week? I'm like, oh, gymnastics. So I talked to my kids, I'm like, do you like gymnastics? We hate it. Like, okay, well, I kind of hate it too. So what are the pros? What are the cons? I'm like, well, what else could we do? And they're like, we love to go to the park. I'm like, let's go to the park. So we started going to the park every day on those days, saved me a lot of money, and we got to just be outside. And they were doing the same things. I mean, they were on the jungle gym. I mean, obviously, if they were going to be gymnasts, it would be different. But like they were on, and it was like one of those things that I realized I was doing something because I thought I should. But really, there was another way and then sitting out at the park in the afternoon on those days was so much more fun. I didn't have to drag them there. We didn't get in a fight about it. I didn't have to sit in a hot, sweaty place, right? I didn't have to pay all this money. Gymnastics is expensive if you've ever done it. So, and they weren't like on the road to be gymnasts, right? So that was just a little example of how that little shift made all the difference in the days with my kids. And then I had a woman who did this exercise, and she said with her business, she said, what I saw was I start off in the morning in the negative. So I looked at what am I doing there? And she said, I wake up and I check my email, or I check the news, or I check social media. Like, wake up, like I'm still in bed sometimes, and I'm checking on my phone. So I start in like the -3. And then I try to get through my day with all this like negative, I'm coming from -3 into my day, right? And she said, and then I put off the things I don't want to do in my business to the afternoon. So I've got this like negative energy from checking my email, and then I'm dreading the afternoon because it's coming, that I have to do these things. And then so all day I'm kind of stressed and I'm not in a good place. So at the workshop, she just reworked her day. So she said, I'm going to start off in the morning by sitting out on my back deck with just like a tea and listening to the birds and just kind of getting some space. I'm going to create my intention. And then I'm going to do the things that I usually schedule for the end of the day at the beginning. So I'm going to have my own time, and then I'm just going to knock those things out while I have energy. And I saw her again, and she said it made all the difference because I start off in a good space, I get all that stuff done, and then from 11 a.m. to the rest of the day, I'm doing all the things in my own business that I enjoy. And I have the satisfaction of like, I got that stuff done. It's not the looming list that's coming. But what's cool about it is you can actually see that your body feedback was what told you what was off, which brings us out of the overthinking mind.
So some life coaches and other people, they have different names for it, but the one I like is eating the frog.
Uh-huh.
So it is, again, you're doing your compass thing of like how do you feel and everything.
Yeah.
And it is, you're statistically more productive in the morning, so get the things you're dreading the most out of the way. And there's a lot of nuances with it too. Like you said, it's only up from there. Like you're doing the worst thing first when you're the most productive, and then everything else is good. You get to end on a good note, hopefully positive overall for the day and stuff. So yeah, I like that, eating the frog.
Eating the frog. Like anytime we have something that's just a quick go-to, because we have full days, right? And we have like these, and then if you feel, what I do is like, if I feel tension in my body, I'm like, what is that? Like I like to think of it like there's a disturbance in the water. And I do this with relationships too. It's like it's cruising along, and then it's like something, when you just get that little ping, and maybe they made a comment to you, or like there's something out of balance. You're like, something is off. But what do we often do? Just overwrite it, right? Oh, I'm too sensitive, so it'll work out. And then what happens? What happens when we get that little input that's like something's off or something didn't feel right, and then we just overwrite it? What happens? Ever find yourself like just exploding over something?
Yes.
Because you just let it, well, in all situations. And so like for me, that's my motivator. I'm like, if I don't say something now, I don't want, because it's usually uncomfortable, right? To bring up something that doesn't feel right or feels off. Or maybe you're working with someone and you're like, we have our plan, but something feels off, but I don't want to break it up because we just created this whole plan. But if we don't, it's like we keep getting the feedback, and then now we're invested in it. And we're like, I knew that when we made the plan. So it's uncomfortable. But if, like, what I think of is, I'd rather say it now when I have some grace and I'm like, there's space around it, and we can work on it now, than down the road when I'm like worse self exploding about it or have resentment. Did you want to say something?
Oh,
Or
no,
you
I
just-
was saying,
yeah.
obviously, I think that's right, because it's like, yeah, because a lot of times you're just angry at yourself, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, you take it out on that circle.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
regret turns into resentment.
yeah, exactly. And then you try like that's the nice thing about knowing these things too, not only for yourself, but then when people put themselves in those situations and then they blow up, you're like,
Yeah, so it's like we can bring our best self, right? And I always think of it too, if we acknowledge it, it ends up like everything kind of works. Like there was something off in general, right? So I don't know if you're all familiar with Gabor Mate.
the what?
Gabor Mate, he's a teacher, author, he's in Canada. He wrote a really great book called When the Body Says No. He does a lot of work around ADHD, depression. He's really, really great. But one of the lines in his book that I love so much is, if you face a choice between guilt and resentment, choose guilt every time. Okay, and that's one I remember, because sometimes I feel guilty saying no, or backing out of something, or like saying no to an invitation. But I think, okay, I'd rather feel a little guilty than resenting this person, this situation. So just an example that happened with my partner, my business partner. So she was working with a graphics designer. And every time she got on the phone with this graphics designer, she'd have this, like, she just felt like she wasn't heard. They got in this, when you just feel like, no, you didn't get what I said, like you didn't. And then she would get kind of defensive. The designer would get kind of defensive, and it's like, well, it's not the design I want. And then they just get in this thing, and she's like, she said, I get off the phone, I'm like, oh my God, this is so frustrating, and it's not moving anywhere, and I'm not getting the designs I want, and I'm paying her all this money. And she's like, but maybe, we had this whole conversation about it and around guilt and resentment. And she said, I feel a little guilty. Like I have some guilt around or bad, it's kind of uncomfortable feelings around breaking this agreement or saying this isn't going to work. But I'm going to choose that over resenting this person or this situation, right? Because I asked her, I said, is resentment starting to show up? And she said, yeah, I'm starting to get a little of and dread. Resentment and dread are our bodies, and that's brilliant. Like, I love resentment because, I know that sounds funny, but I love resentment in that, like, my body is a brilliant feedback system to tell me you've overstepped your boundaries. And it gives you, how resentment, like a little bit goes a long way? It's like a tinge of resentment. I feel it right here. But it's like a tinge of resentment. It's like, I can see it coming. Like if I say yes to that, I'm gonna resent it. And I can already feel it, right? So it's like, rather than like, oh, resentment, just push it away. It's like, why do I feel resentful? What is it telling me? What is my own navigation system telling me? Oh, it's telling me I've said yes too many times. I've not had my boundaries. I haven't gotten this is an out of balance value exchange. Right? And it gives us information. Yeah, and guilt kind of moves on. Like guilt, you might feel a little guilt in the moment. They might feel a little hurt feelings. Generally, you could kind of recover. Resentment is like, it's just strength. Guilt is like a lot of things stacked together.
Yeah, that's huge. Guilt moves on.
Guilt moves on,
I
yeah.
like that one versus resentment will just like compound.
It will just compound, and it strangles relationships. Like, think about relationships you've had that have started off really great, and you're all connected, and you're working together, and then resentment starts to creep in. It's really hard to create or be in community with somebody or create with somebody where resentment is present. I have found. It's really hard to step over that and be like, let's have a conversation. I totally resent you, but let's create something.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, and
So it's a hard thing.
And even things like, I had this woman I was working with, and like, I'm very like punctual, right? So I would show up 9 a.m. for our calls, and she would consistently show up 15 minutes late. So I'd be, waiting on the phone and waiting on the phone, and, I might start to like do some emails or whatever. And then she'd show up at 9:15, and then she would not say anything. So that was like the real thing. It was like, hi, ready to work. I'm like, okay, can you at least acknowledge you're 15 minutes late, So it happened. I was like, okay, just whatever. Things happen. Next time. So this was a consistent thing. And I could feel this growing resentment because I didn't feel like she was respecting my time. And I would do everything, like organize my whole morning to get there on time. And I had this, and we were trying to create something together, and it really killed the energy around creating something because I had this resentment. And I thought, okay, it's really uncomfortable for me to like call this out, and I didn't want to. But I was like, I just have to because I can't work. I'm going to have a little guilt of like, maybe she's going to feel bad, but I don't want to have this resentment here. And so, but I said, hey, I noticed that we have our call scheduled at 9, and then you show up to, 9:15, 9:20, and I'm just wondering, like what's going on there? And she said, I'm so sorry, I have this, with my newborn. And she kind of explained her morning scenario. And I was like, okay, I can totally understand what's happening over there. And I said, the thing that's happening for me is when we say 9, I do everything to get there on time. And so when you show up at 9:15, I end up starting our call kind of upset. So what could work with your morning situation? Like, when can you show up? And she said, well, what if we say we'll start our call between 9 and 9:15, and then I'll show up as soon as I can within that 15-minute window. I was like, great, I can totally do that. Because if I know, then I can get on at 9 and I can be doing emails, or I could be working on I could have it in the background, and I'll know as soon as she comes on. And we did that, and it worked out the whole thing, and I had no more resentment. And I understood why. It wasn't about not respecting me. It was about she was dealing with her life, And I'm like, I've been there. I know what that's like. So, but in speaking it resolved the whole situation. And then she sent me a message a week later, and she said, thank you for saying that to me. And then later, I went, when I was with my husband that night, I ended up saying something to him that I was resenting. Because I could see we worked that out, and that gave me the courage to say something, and we worked something out. So it kind of also ripples out in our community. Like, we start to set the tone that if something's bothering us, we say it, and we don't work in the field of resentment. Like, this is kind of our agreement and I think this is one of the things when we look at community, whether it's our business communities or our families or our friends, like, all my communities know if something's bothering me, they will know. Like, I don't show up like, oh, you didn't know that I've been mad at you for a month. They're like, if Jamie's upset, we know. If she's not, she's good, right? So and then it gives permission for other people to bring up things to you, because that's the relationship. That's the community values. This is at least what I do. I get more curious and try to find out everybody's experience they're having, because it's not mine. Mm-hmm. And then how can we start to because if you make one little part better, it's like everything else kind of greases the slide for the other. Yeah. Or if someone just feels heard, they're all frustrated and they come in and they act a certain way, and then you're like, I completely get your experience. You're frustrated, this isn't going the way you and they feel heard. It's kind of like with the person you're working with, of like acknowledging them. Suddenly they can often bring a different tone because they feel hurt, like you heard them. Right? And like validated their experience, even though it's different. Okay, so I want to move to this community handout. So this is just some questions. So the first part is just to look at if you could craft your ideal community, and you may have that. So you can look at, or you may have, like if your homeschooling community is ideal, but then some other communities aren't as ideal, what is it about that ideal community that you love? Right? Or if you're looking for a new community, or if you're looking to strengthen a community, what is it that it would look like, feel like? What do you yearn for? What if you're like, I just want more connection, or I want more ease, or I want to create a new community. I really want a community of people that can support me in my, in this new area of my life. Like, who are you really wanting to call in? And then how would you describe this community? And then we can look at some of these questions. So just for the sake of time, I want to just go through these questions to give you a feel of what they are, and then you can, if this speaks to you, you can spend more time on these. But what I like about these questions is, like Soraya was saying, there's different communities that have different, one, the whole family's there, other is business people, but the common denominator is you and how it feels to you. And that's why, that's like the whole context I wanted to bring to community, is it's not so much what the community looks like, it's how you are in it. How that you feel seen and heard and amplified, and whether it's in a business environment or a family environment or an outdoor adventure environment, you feel good. Versus like I was part of this book club in my community, and my friend invited me, and I really care about this friend, and I go to this book club, and I really hated it. And it was always a good book, and it was always good food. I really did not like me there. I just didn't feel comfortable. So some questions: how do I feel when I am with this person or group? What does my inner compass say? When I was at these book clubs, I was like tense, right? And I was very self-conscious. I was always thinking about how I was doing, what I was wearing, what I was saying, versus, and just where am I sitting? What am I eating? Versus just being there. Yeah. I really love this question. At what level of perception, if back to the first handout, the cultural, individual truth, grand organized design, at what level of perception do I find myself when I'm in this group? So you know how sometimes you get around certain people or groups and you're just, gossip is what comes up, or complaints, or the news, or all the problems. Like that level of perspective, that cultural level of perspective just shows up in the dynamic. And then there's some people around, like what would you say when you're around people in the Goldman Sachs cohort? What level of perspective do you find yourself in? Can you see on that 3 levels of perspective chart, you're in individual, you're not in group. I mean, there's always some group stuff, right? Because anytime you're in a group, you kind of slip in, it might be like a moment. But you're in individual, like what am I doing, what are you doing, how can we support each other? And I would say some grand organized design, like how can we really create something and connect in new ways? And it's kind of automatic, right? Like you join together with here, and we're not talking, we're not like, oh, did you hear what Susie said? That's not the go-to in the
Wait, who's Susie?
in the community. So do I like myself when I'm with them? So I've already talked about this. Or after I've been with them, do I reflect back and be like, I liked who I was. I was the best version of myself. Do I feel amplified or expressed in this group or around this person? So when we resonate with somebody, we naturally are amplified, right? Like we have more ideas, we're more expressed. Like when I shared with Dan, my slide deck, and he was like, I totally get it. I was like, I got amplified, right? Like, yeah, you get it. When I shared it, it was like, you get it. Like if I shared that with someone, they're like, why are you doing that?
That's crazy.
Nobody's going to do that.
So much. Why are you doing that?
Do you know the impact of sitting in front of technology? It's like, this is maybe not a good idea. You get to be amplified around that person. You have more ideas, you're smarter, you're funnier, right? Like your favorite qualities about yourself are expressed. And that's a really good thing to check in with versus like, why do I feel smaller? Why do I feel like that great idea I was just sharing over here now is like landing flat? Mm-hmm. Do I feel inspired around this person or this group? Really important with our business relationships, right? That we feel inspired. Do I feel met, seen, and heard? So like for me, I bring a lot to relationships, right? I'm very discerning, but I bring a lot. I do my work. If something happened, I do my work. I show up, I communicate. I'm really in. If someone's not meeting me there, they're not doing their work, they're not really listening, they're not acknowledging their part, they're kind of half-assing, I'm like, bye. Like I don't have the energy to be doing all the work in the relationship. We're both meeting each other, and like we're both going to do our work, and we're both going to show up, and we're both here for each other. What kind of conversations do I find myself having in the group? Right? Again, am I talking about things? Have you ever been in a group where you're just like, what am I talking about? Like you just find yourself having this like, this is like so dumb. Like I don't even care about this. I'm telling you about this, I don't even care about it. But it's just right? You're like, why am I telling this story? It's like so dumb. Can I work through challenges with this person or group? You know, can I get in trouble? Like, we have a challenge. Can we actually talk about it? Can we work it through? Or there was a challenge and we tried to kind of talk about it and it went south, or that person didn't hear what I said, or it escalated. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to do a relationship or a business relationship together if we can't kind of work through challenges. To what degree are the values of the group congruent with mine? So obviously there's going to be some different ones, but are there enough aligned that are important to you to make it work? This is one of my favorite exercises though, and this combines body compass with, it kind of brings it all together. So what this is anytime you have a person, community, even like project, it's a way to check in first with yourself and then see how much energy are you going to give to this situation. Because anyone else, you just, if it shows up, you're like giving it energy. I used to be like that. Like someone would just ask me for directions on the street. I'm like, I'm gonna give my whole life to making sure that you find this church on 2nd. Right? Yeah, and make sure you got there. Yeah, okay, so, and then like our people that are important to us get our crumbs, right? Because we're so exhausted by making sure we helped every single person that crossed our path. So here's what you can do. So you have something come up, right? You have let's say there's a person in your life that there's a situation you gotta work through. So the first thing you do is you get calm and check in with your body, check in, what is my level of connection with this person? And if it's let's say it's a positive 5, I really feel connected to this person, okay? Then you look at what is the level of at stake? Meaning, am I married to them? Am I so there's a lot at stake. Are they my kid? You know, are we in a business partnership? Or are they like, I have a great connection, but they're kind of like Joe in the diner. Like there's nothing that we're working on. So then you rate the level of connection. Okay, so does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're in the high right corner, your high level of connection and high at stake. So this is for example, like my husband. High level of connection, high at stake. My business partner, high level of connection, high at stake. So this is where I'm choosing to give my most energy and my best. And I put boundaries around other people, environments, so that they don't get my crumbs, they get my best. Okay, then you have the people, if you move over to the, okay, left top is low connection, but high priority. Things can change, you'll see the little like arrow of like can move in directions, but I, for now, just thought, you know what, we just don't have the connection, but we have a lot at stake. So where I operate there is high level, good roads, good weather. So we talk about the things that where we do connect. Okay, or what are you excited about right now? Like we can kind of talk, like we could talk about very little. And I really, really limit the amount of time that I spend with them. Okay, so those are the people, or clients, or work people. If there's not a lot of connection, but there's a lot at stake, they're a big client, but there's not a lot of connection, how do you keep it connecting in the place that you do? High roads, good weather, there. Okay, and then the right bottom corner, these are the people like, I have such a great connection and we have nothing at stake. We have no projects, we're not in the same family. And those are kind of the, when you're in town, let's get together for lunch. And then see you next time. And we should acknowledge, like, we have a really great connection with this person, but we're not going to invest a lot of, you know, if we went to lunch and something happened, we wouldn't invest like a lot of time and energy on making sure that all worked out. It's kind of like great when it's appropriate. And then my favorite corner, I think, is the left bottom. Because these are all the people and situations and projects, by the way. You can use this for projects too. I'm kind of a quick start. So projects, I used to be like, yes, 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 and have this tree of like half grown fruits, right? So if I look at a project, what's my level of connection to this project and what's at stake? Does it really align with everything else? Or is it just like a fun idea that I really don't need to give a lot of energy to? That has saved a lot of time. So the left bottom corner is low connection and low at stake. This is the person on the corner that asked for directions, right? Or like I have like some people that it's like, I'll go to work on solving this problem for them. Like, I don't even have a connection with this person, and like, I'm probably not gonna see them. Like, we're not working on anything together. So those people you can just really start to, unless it feels good in the moment, start to really move to like not giving energy to. Not in a mean way, but just not giving energy to, so that you have the energy for the top right people. And it's not about not helping people or being kind, but it's like sometimes I am also new to that city, and I'll literally be like, let's pull out the map and figure it out together, which takes a lot of energy and time, versus I don't live here either. And then they find the next right person that actually lives in that city and can tell them right down on the corner, right? So just discerning these saves so much time. And there's the arrow, because people, if you're working on a project, if you're married to them and then maybe you're not, or you're working on a project and then you're not, they were in that top box and now they've moved somewhere else, right? Depending on the situation. So for me, this tool is like a game changer with discerning priorities, and also who am I really going to give like all to, and who am I going to give whatever's appropriate in that dynamic and moment. And having our community be the top right corner. These are the people we'll give our all to, the people that we want to really invest. And that's all. I think that's all. Yeah.